Hi everyone, my name's Rob Holmes. Welcome to Podcast Property, and my co-host with me today is
Tom Webster, as always.
Okay,
mate, you right?
Yeah, good. So today we have a personal friend of mine, someone I've got a huge amount of love and respect for. He's helped me out in my property and business life. His name's Alex Seery. He's done really well. He's 30 years old. He's got a fantastic story. How he built his property portfolio, and there's some really good learnings in there as well, in terms of he actually has 75 HMO rooms and he hasn't put a penny of his own money into building that. And he tells you how he did that. And it was some what I thought was a really clever way of identifying those investors to work with. And then how he's pivoted from that into business, and the business that he's built, and how he's helping people there. And the books that he's writing and things like that. So I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode. I mean, over the past couple of years of knowing him, I've learned so much from him, and we're bringing him to you today for an hour.
I was really looking forward to today. So Rob spoke so highly of him and explained sort of his history and his past and what he'd done for Rob. And I was like, no, he sounds like the perfect guest. And it was when me and Rob sat down and said, "Oh, let's bring the show back. Let's kick off for season 2." His name was at the top of the list, wasn't it? And you've been trying to get him on the show, so like we're lucky to have him. I learned loads. Do you know? Again,
I was going to say, what did you think?
I thought it was amazing. Just thought as soon as we got off the call, as it were, I just said to him, I really like him. Like I really like him as a person. Do you know? And I trust him. I know he's genuine, and I haven't even spent an hour with him, and I'd give him my money.
Yeah, but he really is genuine.
Yeah,
he really wants to teach people about freedom and happiness and niching and doing what you're good at, and he's really passionate about it.
Yeah, and what I really like is that he's selling what he knows. Do you know? So like, and he's really open and honest about it. I think so. He was a police officer that then went into property, then went into business, and he's educating people how to do what he's done. And I think the big problem at the moment, it's very easy to get a microphone, to get a camera, to get on Clubhouse and just regurgitate stuff that you've learned from self-help books and all this sort of stuff.
It's a bit like what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly what we do. We ain't got a clue what we're doing. But the fact that he's telling his story and the lessons that he's learned, and then obviously he's then built his own knowledge bank up from learning from others, and he's putting that back in and in. And he tells us a couple of success stories of people that have been through his courses and stuff, and yeah, just really impressive, really nice guy. You're going to really enjoy this episode. Actually, I think this is up there with the gold standard of podcast property, I think.
Yeah, wicked. Let's do it.
Cool. So as always, if you want to follow us, catch us on the socials at Podcast Property. Please remember to subscribe, leave reviews, like it, all of those sort of things. It really helps us. And if you want to get in touch with me and Rob, you can. The website is podcastproperty.co.uk, and there's a button on there to email us and get in touch. Any recommendations for the show, anyone you'd want us to interview, just any feedback. Problem with podcasts is a little bit one way, that we put this stuff out there and we don't tend to get a lot back because it just is what it is. But please do feel free to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Enjoy the show, and I know you will, so I don't even have to say that.
Morning, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Good weekend?
It was good. It was really good. Chilled out, and as much as we can do in COVID. So yeah, all good. You?
Cool. Yeah. All good this end. So I'm going to take the lead today because obviously we've got a prior relationship.
We have.
You've met Tom, but we've known each other for a few years.
Yes.
So what we normally do with our guests is just ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. You can go all the way back to childhood, kind of key points in your upbringing and school and college and things like that have helped you kind of get to where you are today, or pivotal moments, things like that. And then how you've kind of got yourself into property to begin with and where you went from there. So I'm not going to ruin it for the listeners because I know the story.
Yeah.
I know they don't. I know Tom doesn't as well.
Yeah, no, I've been really looking forward to this. I was just saying before, as Rob's put you on a massive pedestal, so you're going to have to be like the perfect guest. No pressure or anything. But...
Okay. Well, I'll hold back.
Let's go.
Yeah. So I was raised in a place called Hucknall, which is in Nottinghamshire, and typical, family to start off with. And then something happened at 10 years old. So at 10 years old, my mum and dad split up. I can remember very vividly argue about finances and so forth. And long story short, they split up, and that was kind of a pivotal point in my life because the man that I loved the most left the family. Right, he left, it kind of never to be seen again. Actually, I'm 30 years old now, and I haven't seen him since.
Oh, sorry to hear that, mate.
And no, it's so good. I mean, these things are make us stronger. And at 10 years old, I then started growing up with my mum and my brother as well. Brother was 2 when mum and dad split, and growing up with mum was hard. Like, it was tough. I was a typical lad. We just didn't see eye to eye. Never got in trouble with the police, obviously, or anything like that, and just grew up teenager. And through school, I was not academic or anything like that. Primary school, secondary school wasn't academic. Typically below average is what I would probably say. And then it got to breaking point between me and my mum. I think at the age of 19, started to become quite depressed, and used to go out with the lads, get involved in fights, not with my friends, but actually just go out and actually get in trouble. And it was kind of this vicious circle where I would go out, get in fights, come back, and yeah, that was typically my life. And I had no kind of prospects of a successful future, a free future, and I bounced from one job to the other. I worked in various roles such as inbound sales, selling typically broadband. I sold other packages such as customer retention packages, but it was kind of all inbound. It wasn't kind of outbound. And then at the age of 21, it got worse, and I can remember feeling like taking my own life. I can remember feeling suicidal. It was the first time I kind of had thoughts around that, and the more I thought about it, the more it kind of developed and developed and developed. And I didn't tell anyone at the time, or anything like that. I didn't talk to anyone about it. It came out through the actions I did when I was with the lads, my old peer group. And I can remember telling my mum that I wanted to take my own life, and the message I got wasn't the kind of the response I wanted. And then from that, instead of playing the victim, I then Googled how to become rich, and up came a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is on my bookshelf behind me. And I read that book, and it was the first book I ever read. From school, I got suspended from school. I was a typically below average guy, and it was the first book I ever came across. And when I read that book, I remember tears dropping on the pages, thinking, Jesus, why is this not taught? This is my way out. All right. And I looked at my mother, I looked at my father, who weren't financially successful or anything like that. And I just wanted to be the complete opposite. So I made in that kind of aspect of my life, period of my life, that I would be the opposite. And I set goals for the first time. Which was to, join as a police officer. I wanted to become a police officer. It's a good, secure job, was something to go into. And I actually thought this thing that I developed, this personal development world that I came across, wasn't working to start off with, because what happened, I actually got kicked out of home. So at the age of 21, I found myself homeless, and thankfully, I met a girl. Her name was Claire, who I was with for 10 years in total. But Claire and her mother took me in, and I never returned since. So since the age of 21, still not gone back. And I kind of started my journey on myself, my independence. So long story short, from that, I started to develop, train in the gym, stop the bad habits, start going out with friends, really put my mindset as a priority going forward. From that, I then joined Nottinghamshire Police as a special constable first, and then I went in to custody as a detention officer. And whilst I was there, I had another pivotal point where I realized actually I didn't want to become a police officer anymore. I didn't want to go down this path. And that was the first instance where I realized of something, a terminology, which I wrote by my second book, is something called wage slave. I see a lot of people sacrificing their happiness for a wage and or pension, thinking that's the only route they should go down. And I firmly believe, if we bake a cake in life, if we add, cancelled rest days, if we add in, not seeing your kids, if we add in a bit of pension changes, injuries, politics, basically a lack of controlling your life, and you put that in a bowl and you mix it up and you put that in the oven, which is the length of your career or service if you're in the police, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get the same result of those colleagues around me. And I could see the colleagues around me were unhappy. They were miserable. They didn't like their jobs. They were there literally to have the salary and the pension. So I decided, I didn't want that. And I thought about going in business, because these entrepreneurs, they have freedom. They have a passion career. They're highly rewarded for the work they do. And I thought, well, how do I get started with business, right? I'm a broke detention officer. I'm homeless at the time, still living with my girlfriend, not got any business acumen whatsoever behind me. And I thought to myself, well, how do people get started in this? And thankfully, I'd consumed lots of books from that 21-year-old guy who was depressed and suicidal and carried on that on. And this time I'm 23 years old. So I started seeing a common theme amongst these books, and the books had mentors. They had coaches, they had mentors, people guiding them away. And it makes sense, right? If we learn to read and write, we learn from parents and teachers. If we learn sports, I play golf, I've got a golf coach, right? I want to learn that skill. Learning to become a police officer. I know Rob was a police officer. You go through training school to become a police officer. So it makes perfect sense when you go into business to actually get that kind of education to help you go forward. So long story short, I had some savings at the time. And also I took out a bit of debt, and I spent £18,000 plus of that on education, specialized knowledge. From that, I was able to go into a network essentially, and able to meet investors, meet joint venture partners. And I was able to accumulate about 75 rental units in Nottinghamshire. And kind of the rest is history. They all consist of JVs, high cash flowing properties. I was able to resign from the police. Unfortunately, I literally had to go through shit because I got covered in human feces and penis slaps repeatedly before resigning. So that was kind of my ticket out. And basically I resigned. I lived life on my terms, and I was free. I was away from the rat race. I was cleared my debt. And I've not looked back since. And since resigning at 26 years old, I kind of got itchy feet and realized property is not my passion, right? Freedom is my passion, free, like building businesses, doing things I want to do. So from that, I wrote a book called Police Officer to Entrepreneur, which was a bestseller in 3 different categories on Amazon. And the reason for that is because a lot of police officers were asking me, how do I do things? How do you build a business? How do you do this? How do you do that? Wrote the book, founded the company Shifts to Success in 2017 as well. Ran our first event in 2018 with 10 of amazing police officers. And then from that, we've now scaled to 2021 with 160 clients. We've gone global. And I'm about to release my second book. So that's a kind of a shortened version, I'd say, of my story.
That's incredible. What a life. I just first of all, I want to say is I just want to say like how brave it is for someone to openly talk about suicidal thoughts.
Mhm.
So I think there's obviously mental health, and men's mental health is something that's gathering more pace, but it's still one of those things that people feel shy to talk about. So I know obviously you spoke about this before, but I just want to say thank you really just for sharing that part of your life. And I think more people need to be open and have those sort of conversations. So I think that's extremely brave.
Yes.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much for kind of sharing all of that. So there's lots to talk about from all of that. So let's go back a little bit and talk about some of those books that you were reading. So obviously you mentioned Napoleon Hill. Mm-hmm. So can you give us and the readers some of your other key books that you would listen to as we would on Audible, or you would read?
Yep. So Think and Grow Rich of Napoleon Hill. I think The Slight Edge is a game changer for me. I didn't actually read this until later on. I think, in fact, when I was in business full time, but it's had a much profound effect on my life. A Slight Edge. I've got coasters around my house of the diagram that it illustrates in that book. I also think Success Principles by Jack Canfield, Relentless by Tim Grosvenor. I also think that The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy, or The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, is a good book as well. And yeah, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude by Napoleon Hill. There's absolutely loads. I think with personal development books as well, and this is something I got in a habit of doing, is that you can get in a habit of consuming. So here's what happens. You read a book and you go, oh, I didn't know that. What else don't I know? So you read the next book and they go, oh, I've learned something new. What else don't I know? And you consume and consume and consume. So if I had one regret in my life, I wish I started business sooner rather than think, because there's always going to be something you don't know. And sometimes we get in this kind of dopamine hit release mentality of reading all this stuff we didn't know about. And we can go down this route, years pass by, consuming and not actually taking action, right? And I think that's what a lot of people get trapped in. They feel like they're moving forward because they're reading books when actually their life's not actually changing because they're not taking the actions from the implementation of the book.
Oh, most definitely. I think one of the things that I've learned most about doing this podcast is when you're speaking to successful people and people that have achieved something, the big difference between those and just your normal peer group and people you meet day to day is the action they take.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, it's very easy to read a book. That's actually probably one of the easiest things you can do is just or listen to an audiobook when you're driving in a car. But to take those lessons and then implement them into something, that's the hard bit. That's the bit that takes the bravery and the risk and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
So going a bit on from that, so you mentioned a little story where you got covered in a compound, shall we say? So can you tell us a bit more about it? Because I know that's in your book, and that was kind of a key point for you. So what actually happened?
Yep.
Because it's quite funny to listen to. I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time. And why did it take to get to that point for you? Do you think to make that decision?
Cool. And that's a great question. So how it happened, it was just a normal, I think it was a Friday evening. And it's funny because I actually met the same sergeant. I haven't seen him in 5 years, about 2 weeks ago. But I came onto custody desk and straight away, Sergeant Mulligan, we call him Barry, said, Alex, I need you in FR2. I remember the cell name, FR2. And we start approaching, and basically we can see on CCTV, this guy's got a thing around his neck. He looks like he's collapsed on the floor. Start approaching the cell door and it's absolutely heaving. Like you start gipping straight away from the smell. And I'm like, oh my God, I know what's coming. I was kind of hoping he would, stay on the floor and we just go in and that's it. Sergeant opens the door. The smell is just hits us straight away. There's urine, there's blood, there's feces everywhere. And this detainee is naked, bollock naked. And essentially the sergeant goes in. I stay at the cell door. I'm like, I'm not going in. I'll let the sergeant go in. And
good choice. Good choice.
Well, you think that, but I got the worst end of it. Sergeant goes in and extracts the cardigan or the jumper around his neck. When he does that, the detainee jumps up, like surprise kind of thing, and he's, as I mentioned, he's completely naked. And my sergeant tries to grab him, but because he's covered in just slimy feces and urine, he actually starts running towards me at the cell door, and he's trying to escape, right? He's trying to get out and run riot in custody. And everything seems to go slow motion when things like that happen in your life. And this guy's running towards me. And he's well endowed. He's a very well endowed guy. He's running towards me. That's swinging everywhere. We get hands on. I start wrestling with him. I can repeat.
What, the penis or the man?
Well, both. It turns out both. His penis starts repeatedly slapping me in the leg, like a thud. I've got feces everywhere. We go to the floor. By that time, everyone's around him. My inspector, other police officers, other colleagues as well. And literally I stand up, I'm covered. I've got shit in my hair. I've got feces in my eye. I've got, on my eyelid, I've got feces on my lip. I'm just covered in it. And I'm thinking, what's just happened, right? So I say to my inspector, it's kind of the first time I spoke to my inspector like that, but I said, boss, I'm going home. And before showering, went upstairs and shower. By the way, other colleagues, a good friend called Adam, he was covered as well because he actually helped him drag him off, and go up and start cleaning. And I can remember going home, and I was living with my ex-partner's mother at the time, and get home, have another shower just to scrub it all off. I can still smell it, just the feeling of it. I was in the shower and I thought to myself, I really don't want to go back. And at this point, I realized I don't have to go back because we had a 6-figure plus business by then, and I didn't have to actually go back. So I spoke to Claire, my ex-partner, and we decided enough's enough. My resignation's going in. And that was kind of that. It took me a while to get to that point, potentially because, it's just a fearful thing to do. But also at the same time, due to us getting our first house, because again, I was living with my ex-partner, we needed to make sure it was mortgageable. And the mortgage company wants to see PAYE income instead of, because we didn't have 2 years worth of books yet. So, and that's kind of the reasons, and that's how it happened. I wrote about this in my first book, saying sometimes you have to go through some shit in life, right? You can
Literally.
you have to go through in your life, the hand you're dealt with, whether that's going to be parents, abuse, it could be any other thing that people go through in life, or literally shit, in my case, wrestling with crazy detainees.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So tell us then, obviously you got to this stage where you had this income.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, it was a 6-figure income. So it wasn't small.
No.
Do you think that some people, they build their businesses or they build their income from other sources, property, for instance, but they don't always quite realize what they've done for a while? It's almost like when you're trying to lose weight or get in shape, right? You are one of the last ones to see the change in the mirror. Like your brain doesn't recognize it. Do you think that happens a little bit with business? Because if you're earning a 6-figure income, why stay so long? Do you think that your brain hadn't quite caught up with what you'd built yet?
Yeah, there was that, I suppose, because you probably the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen if this safety net of an income goes, which I was working towards anyway. So, in hindsight, I don't know why I was thinking that. But as I mentioned, I needed to make sure me and my partner had a mortgage, and I needed to make sure that I could hand in my pay slips to say, look, I'm still working in the police, give me a mortgage kind of thing. And that's why it probably took longer than it should. I also went off stress with sickness as well due to the poo episode. And that was probably why it took a bit longer as well.
Yeah. And I think for anyone listening as well, some of the stuff, obviously Alex's story is fairly extreme, but it's not uncommon. So for police officers, they are dealing with stuff like that every day up and down the country. So
I'm going to find. I'll ask both of you this question. Actually, obviously, both sort of ex-police, and it's nothing to do with property, nothing to do with, but just as an interesting political point. When we talk about mental health, and from what I gather, a lot of the police time now is dealing with mental health issues on the street, schizophrenia and the like. What can you go into a little bit more detail? So, like, what an experience the police officers are getting at the moment, and is there solutions out there? Is there where do you think it can go, and what do you think needs to change?
For me personally, I don't think there's enough support at all for police officers and their mental health at all. The suicide rate is ridiculous across the public sector, actually, nurses and stuff as well. They have certain instances where they can go to certain houses like Flint House and other areas they can go to kind of get help, but the support just isn't there. I mean, we've got a lot of police officers inside our community, and the majority of them do have problems due to the job. They see things in the job that just we don't normally see. I mean, I've not even seen them as a DO, but you see things such as abuse on kids, murders and stuff. That has a negative effect, a cumulative PTSD. And I just feel like there's not enough people out there to support police officers at all. And there's other businesses out there. Thankfully, some of our clients are actually creating therapists, programs out there to help police officers combat this, but there needs to be more, because, the more mental health there's going to be, the more, unfortunately, suicides there may be as well, and sickness rates, etc. So for me personally, I don't think there's enough. And it's a big problem that needs to be solved for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Anything you'd add to that, Rob? Any of your experiences? I
think within the police as well, unfortunately, mental health just isn't really that well understood. So you don't know how to deal with it really on the street. You just deal with whatever's in front of you. But then equally, when your colleagues are not well, people don't know how to handle it, and people don't know how to help them, and things like that as well. So it's dangerous, really. I think, but yeah. But let's move on from that.
Yeah.
Let's cheer the episode.
Let's go to something a bit lighter.
So
I've got a quick question. So
go on.
okay, so what was it that made it property? So obviously there's a million different types of businesses you could set up. There's a million different types of industries that you could have joined. So what was it about property in specifically that you said, actually, do you know what? I think that's where I'm going to make my freedom. That's where I'm going to make my money.
Yeah, and I asked myself this question as well because I've not got a passion for property. I've got small hands for a guy, so I'm not good at DIY or tools or anything like that. And what it was typically is a first kind of instance where I thought of a business idea to go down. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as I'm sure a lot of people have read in that industry, and read that. He talks about property a lot. Read another book called Property Magic, went down that route. And before I know it, I was learning more and more about property, right? And you hear all the time, wealth, and it's a very common thing to go down to build that wealth. And for me, I just find myself into it. And also, it's the first thing that kind of intrigued me the most. In school, nothing really intrigued me, right? Other than just being a class clown. But property, that first instant for me was, oh, I get it. I get mortgages. I get how I can leverage that. Oh, I get how banks work. I get how we can split the cash flow. And also for a guy who's rubbish at maths, I actually understood how to, look at the costs and look at the net profit and how many I'd need to get to my goal. So for me, it was just accumulation of reading books that led up to that. And I found myself into that. But now what I know within building Shift's success is that there's typically 3 areas that I encourage people to focus down. Number 1, something that you're going to enjoy, so it can develop a passion into. Number 2, that has demand, so there's problems to be solved. And number 3, there's profits to be made. If there's one out of alignment of that, as with me and property, because I don't enjoy it really, then you're not going to have that kind of entrepreneurial sweet spot. Whereas Shift's success, that enjoyment, that demands, and the profits to be made gives me that kind of fire. So long answer, but how I found it was basically by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad 1, 2, and 3.
And then what happened? So I remember you had to make a choice, didn't you, originally, between investing in yourself and investing in your first home, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, me and my ex-partner, Claire, we was really looking to move out. Living with your mother-in-law, she's lovely, but it can be hard work, right? And we wanted to move out, and we could get either a house to move into, me and her, and we can start our life together, or we invest in the business, essentially, invest in the futures, allowing us to get to us where we want to be. And a lot of people, and this is probably a lesson for your viewers, is that not many people are willing to sacrifice short-term gain. They're not willing to do that. Whereas I was willing to actually sacrifice short-term gain for my long-term vision, right? I'm 30 now, but the time some people think, oh, I'm getting on a bit, I was 24. So what I essentially did was use my savings and took out a bit of debt to invest in myself. When I invest that money, I actually threw up. I got sick. And the reason being is because it was the most amount of money I spent, right? I had probably a bit of anxiety, went to the toilet, threw up. And what I did, essentially, my strategy was that I went into this educational business to learn about these insights when I was broke. I didn't have any experience whatsoever. I was 24 years old. And in hindsight, I was thinking, in hindsight now, thinking that's probably a bit of a bold move, a crazy move. And in fact, people told me, what are you doing here? Like, how are you going to do this? And I basically, what I now know is something called split the deck. So splitting the deck is a terminology that I've wrote about in my second book, where essentially I needed to know who had the money, what investors had the money, and who's willing to JV with an inexperienced 24-year-old. All right. That was my strategy. That was my goal. So what I did was, in my network, I had collected all the business cards and the numbers, the emails, etc., from people in my group. And there's about 16 total. And I then went about to find a deal. All right. I got shit done. I made sure I was speaking to estate agents. I was stacking deals. I was getting myself out there. I made it known that I was out there trying to get these deals. And then had a deal. It wasn't great looking back. But I had a deal, and essentially, I didn't get this deal, by the way, but it was the first deal, kind of a sniff I got. Then I projected that out to my database, essentially, of these people who are collecting these business cards. Sent an email, the numbers, the return on investment, the price of the property, the investment required, the area, the professional tenants that we were after, everything you need to know from an investor point of view. What I got then was a response from about 13 people, investors, I believe. Okay. And what that told me was who's got the money and so who's willing to invest in the 24-year-old who had no previous experience. Where my focus then went over that year was those group of 13 people. There's no point focusing on people. Exactly, right? There's no point focus on people who haven't got, the resources that I need. So I focused on the 13. I split the deck, splitting the cards, split the deck, focused on those 13, started to build relationships up there. Then when I had a better deal, which was one of the deals we've got now, I then worked with a phenomenal guy called Sam Platt, who ended up changing my life. He was the first guy who took a risk on me, and kind of the rest was history. I separated the market, the 60, from my market, which was a 13.
Wicked. And then what happened? How did you build? What did you build? How quickly did you build it? And where are you at now with property?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a couple of rent-to-rents in my journey as well, but primarily the focus was on joint ventures. So we bought properties, basically, 100,000, 107, one was 85,000, which investors in London and Bournemouth.
Yes. Go get a garage for that.
Right, it's cheap. So, and the way this came about was that they was leveraging my time being in Nottingham, and I was leveraging their funds and expertise because they had more knowledge than me as well. And essentially, we bought a property, we split the profits 50-50. They fund the whole entire lot. So to this day, I've not put any of my own money into any of these properties, even though I own them. And that's how it happened. So we did one, 50-50 split, worked great, did second, did it again. Other investors saw what me and Simon and Sean were doing. And so I want a bit of that. And they invested a lot of money, and we had getting 4 deals with them as well. Then I did 2 more with Simon and Sean. And yeah, we just snowballed and got 75 tenants, 75 units. And
they all sort of traditional family lets. So you got HMOs, service accommodation.
They're all HMOs, every single one. So there are no single lets, there's no service accommodation whatsoever. They're all professional tenants. They're all near businesses, transport links, etc., coffees, bars, and yeah, that was it. That was the strategy. And my whole purpose, and I can remember doing podcasts, back in 2018 on property, and I can remember clearly saying then property is only a vehicle for me to pursue other things. That's all it was, is to get me the freedom to do what I want, so I can focus on other things.
And at what point did you realize that? Did you realize that going into property, or once you were kind of halfway through, did you think, actually, no, this isn't what I want to do, but I can see it's going to get me there?
Probably the second deal, the second HMO deal for me. I was like, I can't see myself doing this forever. I project managed the first 2 HMOs myself, and that was hard going, dealing with trades as its own challenge. But all the same time, and I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make a bigger impact than I knew in property. And, I wanted to, just build a bigger business. I think property has its challenges. It's geographically based. I want a global business. I want to have a global impact. And the second deal in, I knew, great, I'm probably going to use this as a vehicle, not to actually, get bigger than I want to in property. That was kind of my goal.
And did you get to a stage, or are you at a stage where do you even do property anymore? I know you've got the 75 HMO rooms that you've got, but do you still do deals? Are you actively looking for them? Are you not? Would you still do them if one was put across you, or do you just feel that you don't need to anymore?
So to answer the latter question, I don't feel like I need to anymore. I've got enough, and I think there's there comes to a point where actually you've got enough. And I think sometimes people get themselves, they create this monster, it's too big, and actually it subtracts away from their life. Where I value freedom, I value time. I'm very hands off, so I don't do anything really to the property. It's actually systemized. It's got processes. There's someone who looks after the rooms for me, and that's looked after. If a property came across, then sure, I'd do it. So the last 4 deals, in fact, or 3 deals, I actually didn't source. So my investors who are based in London sent me a WhatsApp saying, "Hey, there's this property," because I was so focused on shift success, ran the numbers, viewed the property, purchased it, and that was it. So if one came over, the numbers worked, then of course, yeah, I'd probably do it. But if that doesn't impact the things I've got going on in shifts to success.
So you actually got to a stage where I would say your reputation in property was so good that people were bringing you deals just to be able to JV with you, is what you're saying almost.
If you want to put it that way, I probably wouldn't say that about myself, but thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. We got to the point where my investors knew and other people knew that I was focused on other things, shift success. And of course, they had someone on the ground who they trust in Nottingham, and they were sending me deals. And I said to all my investors, look, whoever brings me the deal first, I'm going to JV with them. All right. And that was kind of it. So when they were searching for properties in my area, wherever came through first, yep, I'd have a look at it and go and do it. There's been instances where people have sent me, emails saying I've got 500,000 to invest. And I've said, look, I don't want to invest with people I don't know. I keep my circle very small. And I'm focused on other things now. So if one came across with my investors potentially, but I'm not actively looking.
And I think that's a really, really important point for people listening. There's 2 things there. There's firstly joint venturing with people you do or don't know. And I think that's a very individual choice. So I'm actually of the same train of thought as you, is that I won't JV with people I don't know. And I mean, well, Tom, we mentioned on the last podcast, even someone the other day just down the road suggested, would I be open to a JV? It wasn't a deal anyway, but before I even knew that, I said, look, I just don't JV with people I don't know, because things can go really, really wrong. And before you know it, you could have 17 different JV partners with 17 different companies, and it's going to take you twice as long to get to where you want to go. And then the other thing is not being afraid to say no. You literally said no to £500,000, and there's people listening that go, "You're crazy. That's insane." But it's not. It's right on track. That you have to be able to say no sometimes.
Yeah, I've said no to property deals with very successful educators in the property space because our values aren't in alignment. And also I've said no to opportunities in business space. So people want to have shares essentially of shift success, and I can get something from them. So it's a win-win always, but I've actually walked away from those. And the reason being is that values are a big part to play. I see a lot of people, if you flip it on its head, would you jump in a relationship with someone who were not the same values as you? It'd probably end up in a nightmare, right? Same thing with business arrangements, same with business deals. It's like a marriage. It's like a relationship going forward.
Oh, definitely. Like we've had situations before where we had one in Eastbourne where it was, how would you call it? It's like a bedsit type thing. I can't think of the word. I mean, you come out of prison, come out of sort of the hospital and things, and they put you in these homes. And me personally, I don't know whether it's from sort of like families, I don't ever want to profit from someone else's misery. And it's just not me. I think like, I'm glad that there's those services. And obviously I think that's more of a state thing that needs to be done, and the private sector's picking it up. But personally, I never really felt comfortable with it, and we never went ahead with it. And it was like, my value is I don't want to make money off of someone else feeling miserable. And and then like they're saying, I think people need to spend time with themselves to work out where they sit in these spectrums and where they feel that they can feel comfortable and where they can earn their money. If we go back to so saying he wasn't particularly well educated, he wasn't really academic. So writing a book, that in my head, that's sort of reserved for the people that that were educated and were. So how did you feel? I think the question is how did you get the confidence to write a book, and how did you find the process?
Yeah, so I had confidence, as I've gained results in business, and this is a bit of a congruency. So I see a lot of people out there teaching things where they've not got the credibility to do so, right? So there's people building educational companies when that's their first business. So building a successful property company was give me the kind of the confidence to go and create this, right? Which was the book called Police Officer to Entrepreneur. The process, once I got my head around it, was actually quite simple. Part 1, part 2, and part 3. It's not a biography whatsoever. It's about business, not property specific either, and essentially just sharing you the methodology of how I built the first company, which came down to 6 steps. And also my kind of hack of to do this, I put trance music on most mornings. I was after the gym, so early in the morning, and I wrote for near enough 7 weeks straight, which is about 65,000 words. The process was good. I think the most tedious part was editing. So once you write it, you then got to go back and edit. Then you've got to send it off to beta readers to check and give you critical, things on your book. Then edit it again, send it off to the publishers. They'll edit it, and then you've got to edit those edits. So it's a full on, kind of, especially when you've read it so many times and you're like, oh, you kind of miss
Can't
things.
see it anymore.
Yeah, you can't see it, right?
So it's very sad. He said, I was talking to my dad about this a little while back, and when someone writes a best man speech, when you write your best man speech first, you think it's hilarious. You're like, oh, this is the funniest thing I've ever written, and you're in bits, and then you keep repeating it. By the time you get to the end, you go, this isn't funny.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. It was that was basically, I read it so many times. It was like, oh, again and again and again. But you got to bear in mind, when it's out there, people are experiencing it for the first time. And it's the same thing when we run masterclasses with our clients, right? You're doing it for the 1,000th time, but they're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And you've got to keep that same enthusiasm and energy up.
That's wicked. And so I know we keep mentioning police officer to entrepreneur. That's obviously how it started.
Yes.
But you're not now pigeonholed just to the police, are you? You've opened that up.
That's right. So we started off, and this is a niche, obviously being very specific with who we help, but also we've coming from that background, I knew a lot of people who want to get out of the police. So Police Officer to Entrepreneur was the book. Shifts to Success is the business, which is a business training company that started off exclusively supporting ex and serving police officers in building successful businesses. What we found is that as we've grew and we started getting success stories and, getting ourselves out there, we've had nurses, teachers, engineers reach out, military personnel reach out, and now we've expanded to the public sector. And since we've done that, things have grown. We've pivoted in 2020, and yeah, we help people in the public sector. Essentially, what I'm writing about in my second book is that wage slaves mentality. If people feel unhappy with their jobs, they feel unhappy with their lives, they feel trapped by their pensions or salaries, then, Shift Success is a business that helps them achieve something new. We're not anti-job. We need jobs. We're we're pro-choices. We're anti, not being happy.
Yeah. And can you give us some examples of some success stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had, let's look at Lorna Reeves. So Lorna, just to give some insights around Lorna. Lorna worked for the Metropolitan Police 14 plus years. She was, she started dreaming of dead bodies. She had stress eczema, stress incontinence. Her weight fluctuated, and she felt like she was trapped, essentially. Lorna came across Shift Success, one of my ads. She did the quiz. She went through that process. She attended one of our events, and through the mentors and herself, we kind of said her current idea, which was the cake baking, was limited. So we gave her some insight. She then founded a company called My Weddings, which is an LGBT specific wedding planning service. She made her first sale at $5,500, which was phenomenal. And in 3 months, I want to say, maybe earlier. And then she scaled that business. She's resigned from the job. She actually left sooner than she did. She actually jumped sooner. She's been on TV, ITV, winning awards. She's been at the Diversity Awards. She's co-authored a book with me now as well, with a guy called Andrew Priestley. And also she found another company called Mile My Events. Mile My Events helps businesses like me and other businesses run their online, offline events. She's securing contracts, £18,000 in California. She's living the dream, and she's in a much better place now. She's cleared all of her debt as well, which is amazing. And she's gone on to live life on her terms. We've had Kelly Statham. This is a property specific one. So Kelly, phenomenal story again. Kelly, essentially, she was in the police. She felt suicidal. She wanted to, her word, ram her car. I think our dog. ram her car into a side of a bollard. She felt like a failing mother, and the police was getting on top of her and all this kind of commotion. Her husband Kevin, who's a phenomenal guy, said to her, "Look, now is the time to leave." They went into business, and unfortunately, they was making a £600 loss because they didn't know what they didn't know. Long story short, Kelly joined Shift Success. She first year, 136,000 in revenue. And she's gone on to now build a £250,000 business. She's got a team of about 5, I want to say. She's won awards. She's featured in magazines, Your Property Network. And she's in a much better place now. She actually invests herself now as well in the stock market. And I think she might do property as well. So there's some examples.
I love it. I love it. I love
yeah.
hearing people's successes. It's just one of those things. And again, like I think the Americans are so much better at it than the English is. We don't tend to talk about successes. So I just love it.
And the thing is, you're taking it one step further, aren't you? Because you've taken people that know maybe a little bit about business or want to start a business or know nothing about business, help them scale that up and make money. And you know what? What I really, really love about what you've done, which I don't see anyone else doing, is that a lot of people are out there selling courses or training programs or mentorships where they teach you how to make money. I'm not seeing those same people teaching you how to make more money, how to compound it, how to invest it. And actually that's what you're now doing as well, aren't you?
That's right. We've so you're never going to hear me or my team sell, passive income. Business is easy, that kind of stuff. That's not our style. Business, in fact, business is freaking hard work. And you hear me on my content say that. What we essentially do is help people start and scale businesses. If they know about business, great. We'll help them scale it. Or if they've got a business, if they don't, we can help them with an idea and start that and get them going. It's about living life on your terms. It's not about, building a £1 million business. It's not building, Kelly as an example, £250,000 business is a good business, right? But we didn't set out to do that. It's about helping them achieve their goals. If people want £50,000, great. If people want 30,000 to supplement their police income, great. It's about their goals. And then from that, because typically we're not taught these things in schools, we actually now teach, which is an additional product called Investing to Success, which helps people to invest in the same vehicles that I invest in, which is going to be index funds, ETFs, exchange traded funds, and property as well. The reason I didn't start off with that first is because you need capital. Although I didn't, I actually knew people to raise finance to invest in property. When it comes to my own money, I invest in index funds and ETFs. So we have Shifts to Success, which helps them start and scale. And then we've launched Investing to Success, which helps them use that money and money management to compound that interest to create generational wealth. And then also we're going to be bringing out Scaling to Success for those individuals who want to go for that £1 million plus.
That's wicked.
Ever fancy crypto?
I haven't, no. So I'm a firm believer of staying in my lane, and I'll say I do not know a thing about crypto. Same with stock picking. I don't invest in individual stocks. Index funds, something I do know about, and I will continue to do that. But crypto, Bitcoin, and there's a lot of hype around it, and Elon Musk, I think, has funded a lot of money into it recently, and Apple. But no, not for me. I feel like it's too much of speculation.
It's man, I love it. Like I'm getting deeper and deeper into it now, and like every week that me and Rob speak, I've gone to the next level. So now I'm in like the altcoins of like the pennies, and they just could literally go 100,000x. But as I say though, with my girlfriend, she's just started putting some money in. So let's say we start with 500 quid, and then in a couple of days it's now worth 530. She's like, well, it's only 30 quid. I said, yeah, it's only 30 quid, but that's like you would have had to put something in the bank account for years and years and years.
Sure.
But you are right. It's about finding where your comfortable level is and your knowledge level. And I think the thing with like, again, crypto or some of the more high risk stuff at the time, like I put a fair amount of time in it because it is speculation. A lot of it is gambling. And if you don't understand where you're putting this money, it can go, it can disappear.
So tell us about, because we had a conversation the other day where, for your program as such, you used to charge in a certain way, you used to run it in a certain way, but you've moved more online because of what's happened the past year. You've changed the way you run that business and take fees and things like that. you don't need to kind of disclose what you're charging, things like that, but can you tell us why you moved the business in that way? I know some of it was to do with COVID, but why have you done that, and how's that affected your business? Because those people listening who are kind of providing some sort of product, do you think the market is changing from these upfront fees to more monthly subscriptions and stuff like that?
Yes and no. I think, there's pros and cons to having a subscription-based business and also a traditional business. Like a subscription-based business will give you kind of that predictability going forward, which is great, and cash flow is going to be there, but it's actually harder to get off the ground. So something, looking in hindsight now, I can explain this. In hindsight, our business was, you pay for a 12-month accelerator. We have live in-person events. We have an online portal. We have webinars every so often as well. Okay. And I have a Facebook community, which is just for paid clients. And COVID hit, can't run live events anymore. And I thought to myself, worst case scenario, what if, hypothetically at the time, what if we can't run live events for 2 years? Right. That was the thought process. So I got the meeting with my team and also shareholders as well, James. And I said, look, we need to start thinking of worst case scenario, contingency. And I wrote about this in my book, but when an astronaut goes to space, they're not going, yeah, we're going to the moon, right? Like in Bitcoin, people say we're going to the moon, right? We're not, astronauts don't say that. They go, have I got enough oxygen? Have I got enough rations? Is my equipment okay? They're contingency planning. So with myself, I thought, right, okay, what's worst case scenario? That's contingency plan. From this, what we happened is the idea of what we dubbed Shift Success 2.0 was an all online, more support. We introduced coaches, reoccurring support, not just a 12-month accelerator. And we updated our systems and processes alongside that. Essentially what happened, we signaled interest. We say, hey guys, to our existing community, hey guys, based on your feedback you've given us through our old model, we think about launching this. What are your thoughts? Put that into the community. People started commenting this, that, yep, this would be great, this wouldn't be great. What about this? What about that? So I got lots of ideas from that. That gave me then confidence to then go, right, we're going for this. And we launched Shift Success 2.0 by saying, hey guys, we're launching this. Here's a priority list. If you're interested, join. And essentially we launched it and we were sold out in our first intake. We had German police officers join as well, which has been amazing. And yeah, we've basically done better than we have in less than a year, than we did previously, which has been great, and also good feedback for us as a business, and our key performance indicators, right? But essentially, what we moved to, a big portion of that was, instead of having upfront fees, and because we're working with people on a reoccurring basis now, if they want ongoing support, our members, then it's just a monthly kind of membership fee to have access to myself, the mentors, our community, and our online portals, and the things that we introduce in the future, like new lessons, new modules. And that's how we kind of change now. A lot of people would look at subscription-based business and go, yep, that sounds great, right? Because they want the predictability, they want the cash flow there. But you've got to think about, and our P&L looks ugly, right? When we transferred our traditional business to a subscription, because we're not taking lumps of cash anymore, the fees were lower, but on a monthly basis, right? So we had to build that up to get to that level where P&L looked healthy. So what happened? Traditional business was climbing, then it went bang, because we had to start building that up. Now, what helped us is because we had cash reserves from the traditional business, which helped us go through that stage of just accumulating the kind of monthly membership fees.
And so, I'm just going to jump in there.
Yep.
And I know one of the reasons you had cash reserves, because we've had this conversation, this is really important for people listening, is that you weren't living off the income you made from the business. No. Why? Because you were living off the income you'd made from the property, right? Okay. So you used the property as a vehicle, and we've had this conversation, Tom, with another guest, I think, actually, where you've used that property to get your monthly income. Yeah, you've not been greedy. You've used it to reinvest. You've built a business. And then rather than taking that money as well, you're now reinvesting. And that's why when things go wrong, i.e. COVID, and you've had to make a change, you've got the buffer, you've got the margin there to be able to do that safely without kind of basically losing your business. And I mean, a lot of people this past year and in the next year are going to lose their business. They're going to go bust because they can't basically ride out the storm.
Absolutely. I don't even think we've seen the worst of it yet. I think we're going to go deeper into a crash and a recession. But going back on that, it comes that principle of short-term sacrifice, right, for long-term gain. You've got to sacrifice. I don't mind sharing this. I didn't take a salary from Shift Success for the first 2 years, not one penny. I reinvested it, built a team, put processes in place because I had the first company, property, that was supporting my living. And because the cash was inside Shift Success, the transition was quite smooth, right? And from that, it allowed us to grow during a pandemic. So yeah,
it's also a good financial planning thing to have, like cash reserves and easily liquid reserves. So from an investment point of view, obviously you've got your portfolio. You might say, oh, I got 70% in ETFs, I got 20% in property, blah 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 blah. And then you always want a percentage that is very liquid, because when the bad times happen, that's when the good opportunities arise. And if you've got the cash in your bank to be able to pursue those opportunities, you've got an advantage over pretty much the rest of the market.
Cash for the crash, right? That's exactly right. That's exactly one of the strategies I'm utilizing right now. But at the same time as well, if like a pandemic happens or something happens in life, right? My dog just had an operation, which was very expensive. We have 6 months cash buffers. So we have cash buffers in my personal and also businesses. So if anything does happen, then you've got 6 months to think, and you get rid of that animalistic brain. Then in those cash reserves, because I don't touch them unless it's an emergency, anything above that 6 month cash buffer, I will then invest to create that compound interest, right? I want to start accumulating that. But I also have cash reserves for the opportunities that I believe are going to be around the corner when it comes to start. I mean, it dips. I think last week we had a 6%. Some companies dipped 6%. I think we're going to go into a deeper recession. I'm talking 10+ dip.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we're not even started yet. I think that the government's almost like, it's almost like it's literally like a false economy to an extent, because it's all being, this money's being printed and it's being kept alive. And then like I've got two sort of methods of thought. One is it's going to come to an end and it's going to explode. Yep. Or is the government going to decide, actually, we've spent so much money now, we might as well spend a load more because otherwise all of that money that we've already spent is now going to go to waste. Because if the economy tanks when they stop, then all of the billions, you might as well have just not done anything and just let it tanked in the beginning. So it could be a bit of a case where we just literally live in this almost like a socialist world where the government just has to keep the economy going because they've already invested so much money anyway.
Yeah. I think I agree with you actually completely, saying that it's a false economy and it's propped up by printing cash. And I think that is going to have a downside in a big way. I think we've obviously saw a COVID dip, but in January it was at all-time highs again, right? That really doesn't seem right to me based on previous crashes like the Great Depression, Black Monday, the dot-com crash that lasted years. Whereas this, just that little blip in COVID didn't seem long enough. Yeah. And that's because it's been propped up by cash, in my opinion. And I'm not a qualified person, by the way, hypothetically.
So what's coming next? What's the game plan? What's your future got in store?
Yeah, so I mean, the book, around my other book at the minute, still don't know what I'm going to call it, but essentially it's for people who are trapped in their jobs and they want a better life, to live life on their terms, right? So that's going to come out this year. We're scaling Shifts to Success. We're hiring 2 new people at the minute. So literally interviews are being conducted. And we're looking to make a bigger impact. We want to reach more people, want to make a difference in people's lives on a bigger scale. Our vision is to be the most prestigious business training company globally that creates transformational life experiences for the public sector, and also doing what I love each day. And I know that's such common advice, but I just want to do what I love, being happy. I want to play golf every single week. I want to do things I enjoy. I want to spend time with people I love, and launch new products that are going to make a difference. I want to invest more. And yeah, probably start a family in the future. I'm 30 years old now, but I do want a family in the future. Being a dad, well, I'm sure will have its challenges. And yeah, just see my team develop, invest in their futures as well. And yeah, just carry on doing what I love, really. If I ever start being like I don't enjoy things, then I'll stop doing that and pivot to something else. I'm not coming back, right? This one life we have, and if I stop enjoying what I'm doing, I'll just change.
Love it.
Wicked. On that note, I think that's a banging end to the show.
That's great. So how do people get in touch with you and follow your journey and get involved with the businesses and the training courses?
Yeah, so we've got a shiftsuccess.com. You can take our quiz. We've got a quiz there to take, see if business is for you. I've got my own podcast called the Shift Success Podcast, which is all about business and entrepreneurship. And also we've got a Facebook community called Business Support, Help and Support for the Public Sector. So people can check us out there, or on Instagram at Alexander Seery, or Facebook, Alexander Seery.
Fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that, Alex. Thank you so much. That was, again, super knowledgeable, learned loads, just a really interesting story. So no, thank you so much for your time. If anyone wants to follow us, you can on all the socials at Podcast Property, podcastproperty.co.uk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those sort of things. And yeah, no, enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for listening.
Cheers, thanks
guys.
for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Property Investors Podcast. The information contained in the podcast is not to be used as financial advice. Everybody's situations and goals are different, and you should always complete your own due diligence on investments and seek personalised financial advice from a qualified person. Feel free to contact the show for professional recommendations. Visit propertyinvestorspodcast.com.